At 68, Franklin Morris, once the U.S. Attorney General, believed that staying active was the secret to aging gracefully. Every morning, without fail, he jogged the peaceful streets of Crescentville. This small town, with its quiet neighborhoods and friendly faces, had always been a safe haven. But on one particular Thursday morning, Franklin's routine would be shattered by an unexpected encounter. As Franklin jogged past the old bakery, the familiar smell of fresh bread filled the air. He usually found this comforting, but today something caught his attention, a faint, muffled cry coming from a narrow alley nearby. He stopped, listening closely. The sound wasn't typical of the serene town he knew so well. Curiosity quickly turned to concern as he took a few steps closer to the source of the noise. Peering into the alley, Franklin's sharp eyes caught sight of a disturbing scene. An elderly woman, small and frail, was being cornered by two young men. One was yanking her purse violently, while the other tried to pry a bracelet off her trembling wrist. The woman looked terrified, clearly no match for these thieves. "Hey, leave her alone!" Franklin shouted with a voice that still carried the authority of his former job. Startled, the two men looked up, locking eyes with Franklin. For a moment, they seemed to weigh their options, sizing up the older man. But Franklin wasn't backing down. He stepped forward, fists clenched, ready to defend the helpless woman. The thieves, realizing they might have bitten off more than they could chew, made a split-second decision. They dropped the woman's bracelet and fled down the dark alley, disappearing into the shadows. "Cowards," Franklin muttered under his breath, watching them run away. He considered chasing them, but age and wisdom held him back. He knew better than to risk an injury. Instead, he turned his attention to the woman, who was now clutching the torn strap of her empty purse, her face pale and shaken. "Are you okay, ma'am?" Franklin asked gently, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Thank you," she managed to say between sobs. "They took everything. I didn't know what to do." "It's all right," Franklin reassured her. "You're safe now. Let's get you some help." Just then, the sound of sirens filled the air. A police cruiser sped toward them, lights flashing. Franklin felt a wave of relief. Help was here at last, or so he thought. The car came to a sudden stop, and Officer Jack Burnett stepped out, his hand resting on his holster. His eyes scanned the scene quickly, narrowing as they landed on Franklin, standing next to the distressed woman. "Step away from her," Jack shouted, his voice sharp and commanding. Franklin was taken aback. "Officer, I was just helping. I said step away." Jack barked, moving closer with his hand now firmly on his weapon. The elderly woman tried to intervene, her voice bleeding. "No, officer, you've got it wrong. He saved me. He's not the one who robbed me." Jack dismissed her with a wave of his hand. "Ma'am, I'll take it from here." Franklin slowly raised his hands, trying to keep the situation from spiraling further. "There's been a misunderstanding here," he said, his tone calm but firm. But Jack wasn't listening. His eyes were filled with suspicion. "Hands where I can see them," he ordered. Franklin complied, realizing that things had taken a dangerous turn. The woman, still visibly upset, tried again. "Officer, please listen to me. Those young men ran off when he intervened. He's innocent." Jack ignored her pleas, his focus entirely on Franklin. "What were you doing here, old man?" he sneered. Trying to make a quick getaway after robbing her, Franklin's patience was wearing thin. "Officer, I've told you already I was helping her. I chased off the actual thieves." Jack's face twisted into a scowl. "You think I'm an idiot? Save your story for the judge." Franklin took a deep breath, trying to keep his emotions in check. He knew escalating the situation wouldn't help. "You're making a mistake, Officer Burnett," he said slowly. The officer's hand inched closer to his gun. "The only mistake here is you thinking you can fool me," Jack snapped. By now, a small crowd had gathered, drawn by the commotion. People started murmuring among themselves, some pulling out their phones to record the escalating scene. A young man in the crowd shouted, "Hey, let him speak, officer." Franklin noticed the crowd but kept his focus on Jack. He knew he had to stay calm, even as the tension in the air thickened. Raising his voice or making sudden movements could be dangerous. "Listen, officer," Franklin began, his voice measured and controlled. "I've been in law enforcement longer than you've been alive." Jack scoffed, clearly not buying it. "Yeah, right? And I'm supposed to believe that." The standoff was unbearable. Jack's finger hovered dangerously close to his gun's trigger. Franklin knew he had to act carefully. He slowly reached into his pocket. "Don't move." Jack shouted, his gun now aimed directly at Franklin. Franklin froze, raising one hand higher. "I'm just reaching for my ID," he said evenly. Jack's eyes narrowed. "Don't try anything stupid." With slow, deliberate movements, Franklin pulled out his badge and held it up for everyone to see. The golden emblem glinted in the sunlight. "Take a good look, Officer Burnett," Franklin said, his voice firm. Jack hesitated, staring at the badge. It took him a moment to read the words engraved on it: United States Department of Justice. Franklin spoke again, breaking the silence. "My name is Franklin Morris, former U.S. Attorney General." The realization hit Jack like a wave. His face went pale, and he quickly lowered his gun. "Sir, I didn't know," he stammered. "You didn't know because you didn't ask," Franklin replied, his voice calm but firm. "You made dangerous assumptions, Officer Burnett." The crowd erupted into murmurs, sensing the shift in power. "That cop's in big trouble now," someone whispered. The elderly woman, now feeling braver, stepped forward. "He's telling the truth. He saved me. Those boys ran off when he showed up." Jack's voice faltered. "It was a mistake." "I didn't mean any harm." Franklin wasn't about to let it go. "Pointing a gun at an innocent man isn't just a mistake, officer. It's a serious breach of protocol." By this time, more police units had arrived. Sergeant Peters stepped out, looking between Jack and Franklin. "What's going on here?" he asked, frowning. Franklin handed over his badge, calmly explaining the events. Peters listened, his expression turning grim. "Burnett, is this true?" Peters asked. Jack nodded, unable to look his superior in the eye. "Yes, sir." Within minutes, Jack was placed on administrative leave. His gun and badge were taken away as he was led to a waiting car. Franklin watched silently, then turned back to the elderly woman. "Are you all right?" he asked gently. She nodded, a tearful smile on her face. "Thank you for standing up for me, and for yourself." Franklin gave her a nod of reassurance. Justice isn't just about the courts. It's about doing the right thing. He resumed his jog, the once quiet streets of Crescentville now filled with murmurs of respect and admiration from those who had witnessed the incident. And this brings us to the end of the story. Thank you for staying with us until the end. If you enjoyed the story, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe to Unfolded Tales Explained and hit the notification bell for more captivating stories. Have a great day.